Welcome, everybody. Welcome to Carbonite. Welcome to Mass TLC NUCO Run Around the Town Day. And thank you for coming and spending some time. We're going to do a little bit of an exercise. We're going to chat about an interesting topic, which hopefully when you read the things, is, oh, I want to sign up for that. There was a good reason why you wanted to sign up for that. And we'll have plenty of time for interactivity as well. Obviously, some of you may be using the social medias for this, so feel free to. This is me, by the way. And if you want to reference me via Twitter, that is me on Twitter. And so feel free to say positive things. Otherwise, I'll give you the alternate address. No, that's probably not right. Okay, first of all, you should have all had one of these on your seat. Please check all the apps and services that you use in your personal and business life. Has everybody a chance to complete this? All right, great. I didn't do my own, but we want to make sure that everyone had a chance to do this. I want you to count the number of checks that you made and just write the number down for me and yourself. On the piece of paper. In section 7 on the piece of paper. When I speak, I get really dry voice quickly, so you'll see me running back over there to the water all the time, or occasionally saying to Sarah, do you have another? Look, she has another one ready for me. Okay, if you've counted up, who has less than 5 things checked? Who has less than 10 things checked? Okay, so we have some that have less than 10. I don't remember how many on here. Who has 15 or more checked? This guy right out here, and this guy over here. Okay. There's a reason we did this, and that's the topic that we want to talk about today, which is this notion which I affectionately and only mildly inappropriately call cloud promiscuity. And it's actually something that is amazingly important, and we're sort of losing sight of it, and I want to tell you why. How many of you remember the first time you took an Uber trip? Who here has not taken Uber? Okay, good. So do you remember the first time you took a trip and you might have been a little bit uncertain? Like, how's it work? Am I getting in a car with a stranger? I'm paying. Right? It was just sort of weird. And then over time, you just like it's second nature. How many of you have stayed in an Airbnb? All right, do you remember the first time you did it? It's kind of weird, right? It's like, staying in someone else's home. I just had a friend who's traveling right now, and she's like staying in Airbnbs while she's traveling. And at one place, some guy said to her, oh, would you mind if I stayed the night too when you're there? And she's like, yes, I would mind if you stayed the night too while I'm here. That's a problem. Let's go even further back. How many of you remember television before you had a DVR, before you cut the cord? Yeah, it's not you. It's way back there. And if you remember, it is a way back there, right? I'm old enough to be able to say that. If you remember doing that, do you remember when you first got the first DVR, whether it's a TiVo or your cable box, or you moved to the, it's not, I don't have to be sitting there Saturday night at 9 p.m. I can do whenever I want. So each of these things are big radical shifts that we sort of, over time, just come to accept as the nature of things, right? We're all aware of this phenomenon. It happens with technology shifts all the time. We just become acclimated to the, I get an Uber, I'm getting into a car with a stranger, they're taking me someplace. I'm staying in a stranger's home and I'm paying them money. I don't have to be online at a certain time. I can just watch my show whenever I want. How many of you remember the first time you stored something in the cloud? All right. Well, it turns out that that's an amazingly similar event that has much less sort of impact on how we think about how we store things. Because what has happened over the past decade or so is we have slowly found that we just willingly accept putting more and more and more of our stuff in the cloud. And we do it sort of second nature. We just checked off. Some of you had 15 different services that you checked off. And it so becomes second nature to think about, oh, my stuff's in the cloud. In fact, we're hooking up with lots of clouds, hence the cloud promiscuity title here. We're hooking up with lots of clouds. Now, how many of you know where everything is in the cloud? How many of you know how to get everything back if something were to happen? Yeah, Bob does. So this is the conundrum that we faced. Over the past decade, we have, as a society, frankly, and certainly there are generational issues as well, ceded most of our storage of our stuff up to the cloud without necessarily having our own checkpoint or inventory on all the different places that we put things. And we've become very reliant on a set of services that do it seamlessly and transparently. You take a photo with your phone. What happens to that photo? It goes up to one or more cloud services, by the way. I happen to have my photos go to 2 different cloud services simultaneously from my phone. And then if your phone gets filled up, what do you do with those photos? You delete them, right? If you have a daughter like I do, the phone gets filled up really fast. Like, you took 3,000 photos. I remember when we first got her phone, and she's like a month later, my phone's filled. And I was like, 3,000 photos. She took every object in her room and took a picture of it. I was like, okay, that's what you do when you're 12 years old. That's cool. For each of the things that we put up in the cloud, how many of you use a different username and or password combo for every one of your cloud services? How many of you use the same? I'm hacking you as soon as this talk is done. We're relying on a set of services that come from firms we trust, Amazon, Apple, Microsoft, Google, et cetera, and from firms we hope we trust, maybe Box or Dropbox, and from firms we might not even know that well. We're essentially sort of playing a little bit of the random hookup game with lots of different people, all of whom have your stuff. You trust them. How many of you know if your stuff in the cloud is encrypted? Right?
You assume it is.
Right. You presume that it is, and it depends on what it is. So if you have personal files in the cloud, do you assume it's encrypted? And if so, who has the key and who gets access to it? So I want you to just pause there for a second, because I've just painted a picture that should scare the living crap out of all of us. We've basically taken all of our images, documents, files, and everything. We've handed it up into the cloud. We may or may not remember all the different password combos that we have. And we're assuming that it's potentially encrypted against malicious or accidental intent. It's kind of a scary picture. And it's, in fact, the picture that we here have spent a lot of time thinking about, as a lot of other companies have, which is at the same time we have become so comfortable with the cloud, we've sort of forgotten one of the things that was a fundamental precept early on in computing. Now, I'll go back again to those of us who are over 25, or 35, 45, right? Pick your favorite age. If you remember back when we just had a PC, to those who can remember that far back, even if you don't go that far back, you just had a PC. We had all of our stuff on that PC, and we trusted it, and we treated it like, oh my God, don't mess with it. And how many of you have ever had a hard drive catch on fire or pour liquid on your PC or in your computer, right? So all bad stuff. And we were prepared for that because it was the only copy we had of all of our stuff. time passes, we connect, we worry less and less about that, and we feel comfortable that we're safe and secure by hooking up with the cloud everywhere. But we're kind of not. Because what happens if something goes wrong? How do we get back our stuff? And this is the biggest point I want everyone to take away from this talk. It's your stuff. If it's in the cloud, and it doesn't matter which cloud, it doesn't matter whether it's your photos, your documents, or whatever, fundamentally it's yours. And I want you to feel a sense of ownership and possessiveness about it, because it's important to you, whatever it is. And you, like me, and like most of us, have possibly become just a little bit lazy about protecting that stuff. And I'm not going to pitch what we do here. Just so happens we do backup, right? Backup, by the way, is different than storage. What we've been talking about is storage. We store stuff in the cloud. How many of you use Box or Dropbox? A bunch of people. It's very likely that you put some number of your documents, but not all your documents, in Box or Dropbox. Have you ever had to restore stuff from Box or Dropbox? They're great services, by the way, terrific cloud storage. It's go, search, find in all the different folders that may be up there. It's kind of a tedious process. That's only one half of the equation. What I want you to think about is, what's the equation, the other half of the equation, that you could reclaim all your stuff that you care about easily, quickly, securely, if something were to happen? To the cloud, there's really lots of clouds out there, or to your identity, if somebody steals your identity and gets this lady's username and passwords to all of her services. Right? Those are the scenarios that we become sort of immune to, right? We don't even think about the, how do I get everything of mine back if I have to? And in a cloud promiscuous world, which, by the way, is just increasing, right? There, more and more of our stuff's going to be in the cloud all the time, and we're just going to leave this room, and in the next couple of weeks, we're going to hook up with another cloud and another cloud and another cloud. Right? How do we retrieve our things? How do we own our possessions, even if they're digital? And I want you to think about those photos and documents and whatever else you put up there as, in fact, things you possess. You own them. You probably created them, or you shared them, or you participated in them. Don't allow yourself to fall into the, I trust the cloud completely. We're a cloud business, by the way. I want you to trust the cloud. But I want you to trust yourself as well. It's not unlike, by the way, money. Right? Who has money in a mattress in case of an emergency? And I, by the way, keep cash in my house. I'm not telling you where in the house, but I keep cash in the house, not a large amount. How many keep cash in the house in case you ever need it, right? It's a handful of folks. It's not that I don't trust the banks, right? But I know that I'm insured. I have my money in the bank. It's safe. Maybe it's Bitcoins, and somehow I'm counting on the massive blockchain register to protect my money. But the reality is that that's my money, and I sort of trust that system. I don't think the cloud is there yet, and there's no FDIC insuring your documents if something happens to your cloud provider. If one of your cloud providers disappears tomorrow, there is nothing ensuring that you have a copy of that. So that brings us to the, well, what do we do? Well, I'm going to tell you the 5 things that I want you to think about to be a good cloud hooker-upper. Is there a better word than that? Thing 1, which I've already mentioned multiple times, it's your stuff. Please write down and remember, it's your stuff. Treat it thusly. Don't think about it just as digital. It is digital, but it really is your stuff. It's your possession. We create more digital stuff than anything else nowadays. Thing 2, please take this little form and fill in the other cloud services that I didn't bother listing there, and have an inventory of where all your stuff is. Create a little spreadsheet, create a little document. I don't care how you do it. I have a spreadsheet, by the way, that just lists all the cloud services, your login ID or your secret code for yourself for your password, by the way, another great thing to do. I have passwords, and then I have secret codes that remind me of the password, so I can put in my spreadsheet the secret code, but not actually put the password in there. So it's sort of, that's the way I've gotten around that particular sort of thing. But have a list. Have an inventory so you know where you have put all your stuff. And if you can, just sort of put, what sort of things are there. Because some of us, like if you're a semi-pro or a photographer, right, you may use Adobe Cloud for a bunch of images, but you also use OneDrive or something like that for a lot of your images. Or if you're using Box for personal and Dropbox. Or if you have 2 Box accounts. Right? That's a thing 2. Thing 3. When you sign up for a cloud service, or you sign up for any service, ask a few basic questions. Who is it? Where is it stored? Is it encrypted? Who has the keys? How do I get it back if something happens? Simple question. You can ask that of all your existing, everyone on here. They should all be able to, by the way, give you an answer to that question, those questions, right? Where is it? It's encrypted. Who can access it? What happens? How do I get it back? Who owns it? I'm sorry? Who do you ask is a great question. Right? Well, I would try to find whatever contact information your cloud provider gives you. Phone number, email, it should say it on their website. Yeah, we have a great customer support organization that will give you that answer, and you can, right? Most good companies should, but it gets a little sloppy sometimes. So, perfect example of, I got to get my stuff back from this cloud service that I just hooked up with, and now I don't have their number, which is the equivalent of, I went out with this girl, and now I don't have her number anymore. I was like, oops. Yes. So it's a great thing for us to do. Let's figure out and make sure that there's transparency in who these folks are. Thing 4. Have some sort of backup plan. Love for you to use Carbonite. Happy to tell you how to do that, but I don't care what you use. Just have a backup. What does backup do? Backup takes a picture of everything, moves it up to the cloud, stores it securely encrypted, and then allows you to restore it when something goes wrong with one button. Those things that go wrong, by the way, are not just my hard drive blowing up, although that does still occasionally happen. Right? The number 1 increasing customer support call we get is about ransomware. Who's heard of ransomware? We've all heard of it. Who's actually been affected? Anyone here actually had a ransomware threat? Yep, right. So that's what you do. If you get ransomware, your choices are pay, or hopefully you had a backup and you wipe the machine and you restore from a previous backup point. So that's why thing 4 was backing up securely. Have your whole system. It's not a big investment, regardless of whether it's your personal machines or your company. Your company may do it for you automatically. Right? But make sure that you're really focused on I have all this stuff in the cloud, but I also have my own thing. Right? I have a way to get my information back. And then I said there was a 5th final piece to this, which is think before you click. And I know this seems silly, but I'm fairly expert at this. I get sucked into services all the time that want to suck up all my documents and or contacts and or other stuff and store it somewhere and do something with it that I probably don't want them to do. I ask everybody to think before you click. It's so easy when we're on our phones or our tablets or our desktop machines to say, yeah, I'd love to be part of this, or I'd love to use this service. It sucks your stuff up, puts it somewhere, and it goes back to these other questions. But I really want everyone to be thinking just a half a second pause before you click on something, which is good behavior anyway, because it's so easy, especially when you're in a rush or you're sitting on the train or you're like, oh, this is fun. And then you get, how many people just download new apps all the time? I know I do, right? And then they say, oh, log in with your Facebook ID. Oh, that's easy. Okay, great. And hey, authorize this. Okay, that's great. And now, who knows what you've actually committed to? You're probably fairly sophisticated folks. Imagine the people who are not as sophisticated as the people who are running around looking at all these technology companies today. You connecting with things all the time, new services. I just signed up for a service, by the way, which I will give a plug to. I have no financial investment in it, but I went through this exact logic because I thought, oh, that's a great-looking service. I'm going to check it out. So I just signed up for this very cool service app called Charlie, C-H-R-L-I-E. Anybody here use Charlie? This gentleman back here. It's a pretty cool app. What does it do? It looks at your calendar, and it looks at all the meetings that you have on your calendar and all the people in those meetings, and it goes out and it pulls together a dossier on each of the people that you're going to meet based on their available social information and or search that they do. So I knew I was having a meeting with Bob here, who I happen to work with, and it brought up Bob was quoted in an article recently about something his agency was doing, and then there was a bunch of other things about the agency itself. So it's a very cool app. What does it do? Well, it also uses my Facebook login. But Facebook, who here has used Facebook, just as an aside? Yeah, right? It's all your stuff in the cloud, just so you're keenly aware of that. Don't forget that you have none of that stuff locally. It's all in the freaking cloud. So if you're wondering where your stuff is, it's likely in Facebook. But Charlie's a great little app, but it also takes my contacts up, right? And it takes other information. It takes my login, right? It gives me a secure connection to my Twitter account and to my LinkedIn account. So every time we're doing this, we're also creating interconnections of our clouds. This is a completely separate topic, but one that I've actually been fascinated by is the fact that each of our cloud hookups is in some sense slightly dependent sometimes upon another cloud hookup or a shared ID, or by expanding our growth through our context, or by expanding the cloud services growth through our context. So we're nothing but a marketing channel. Just remember that, right? Every time a service is free, we're the product, right? So that's, we're nothing but a marketing channel. But each of these apps, when you pause before you click, you can read the first couple of paragraphs of the terms of service. I know nobody ever wants to read terms of service or end user licensing agreements. It's actually kind of fascinating. Who was looking at all of the controversy when they started shipping the Oculus Rift and the end user licensing agreement and the terms of service for that? Everybody know what the Oculus Rift is? It's the VR headset that is owned by Facebook. Turns out, in those terms of service, you basically give them a right to everything. You're wandering around a virtual world. They can do whatever they want with that. They can use that video. They can market to you. They can do whatever they want. You just hooked up with a really big 3D cloud, and they're going to keep you in there forever, and it's going to be awesome virtual reality, and they're going to market the crap, if I can use that bad word, mixed company out of it. So if you get a moment to read through that, just read one of them and see what you learn, because they're totally fascinating ways that and I'm in the business, right? I help make sure you sign ours. We give away little bits of ourselves each and every day. We seed our stuff into the cloud. We forget where it is. We lose track of the things we have or we want. And we don't always pay attention to how are we getting it back. If you follow those 5 steps, you think about the next hookup you're going to have, I promise you will feel a little bit safer at night. I hope. And if you back up, I'll feel a little safer because my company will stay in business and grow. But that's a shameless plug. We're trying to make the world a little bit safer for everybody, and also hopefully make it a little bit better as we go through it. Thank you for coming and join NUCO and the full day, and we'll hope to see you all at some other event. Thank you.